Hey everyone, welcome back. Today, we're going deep on a book that's got me thinking differently about how we're raising kids today.
Oh, yeah. Which one?
It's called The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt.
Okay. Yeah. I've heard of it.
And honestly, it's kind of a must-read, especially if you're around young people a lot. Like, it really makes you rethink childhood.
Interesting. So what's the main takeaway? What's got you hooked?
Well, he kicks things off with this idea of the Great Rewiring.
The Great Rewiring. That sounds kind of intense.
Yeah, it is.
So what's that all about?
Well, he's saying that childhood itself has, fundamentally changed.
Oh, okay. I see where you're going with this.
For us, it was all about running around outside, playing with friends.
Yeah, totally. Not much tech in the picture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But for kids born after 1995, Gen Z,
Right.
their childhood is totally different. Like, they've grown up with smartphones and tablets practically from birth.
True. It's like a whole different world.
And Haidt's argument is that this tech has basically rewired their brains.
Interesting. So it's not just that they're spending too much time on screens, it's that the screens are actually shaping how their brains develop.
That's exactly it. And that's where this whole anxiety and depression thing comes in.
Makes sense. You hear so much about mental health issues with young people these days.
And it's not just anecdotal either. Like, Haidt points out that there's been this huge increase in these problems starting in the early 2010s.
Oh, wow. Is that specific to any, particular country?
That's what's crazy. It's global.
Really?
It's happening everywhere, which makes you think, right?
Yeah, there's something bigger at play. So you're saying Haidt connects that to the whole Great Rewiring idea.
He does. It's like this generation is growing up in a world their brains aren't really equipped to handle.
I get it. Kind of like a fish out of water.
More like, he uses this metaphor. He compares them to being the first generation raised on Mars.
Whoa, okay. That's a powerful image. So, their childhood is so alien compared to what came before that it's messing with their mental well-being. Got it. That makes sense. But how? Specifically, what are the actual ways this phone-based childhood is affecting their mental health?
Okay, so Haidt breaks it down into 4 key things. Social deprivation.
Okay, social deprivation.
Sleep deprivation.
Yeah.
Attention fragmentation.
Yeah. And then
Let me guess, addiction.
you got it. And the thing is, he links each of these directly to how social media is designed.
Okay, now that's interesting. Let's break those down a bit,
Yeah.
because some people might be thinking, come on, is it really that serious?
I know, right? But trust me, there's some solid research behind these claims.
All right, I'm listening.
So let's start with the first one, social deprivation. How is a phone-based childhood depriving kids of social interaction?
Well, think about it this way. When we were kids, we hung out with our friends in person.
Yeah, all the time?
We had to learn how to read each other's expressions, handle disagreements, and just build relationships face to face.
Totally. Those were skills we had to learn, and that's not happening as much for kids today. Not in the same way. For Gen Z, a lot of their social interaction is happening online.
Right, so it's not that they're not socializing at all. It's just different. Like, the quality of the interaction isn't the same.
You got it. That face-to-face interaction is crucial for developing empathy, learning social cues, and just building resilience, things that online interactions can't replicate.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Social deprivation, check. What about sleep deprivation? Teenagers are notorious for not getting enough sleep. But is Haidt saying there's something unique going on with Gen Z?
There is. It's not just about staying up late texting. The blue light from screens actually messes with their melatonin production.
Melatonin, that's the sleep hormone, right?
Exactly. So even if they get enough hours, the quality of their sleep is often poor. And we all know how much sleep affects our mood, our focus, everything, really.
Absolutely. So social deprivation, sleep deprivation. Next up is attention fragmentation. I'm assuming we're talking about short attention spans here.
We are. Think about what happens when you scroll through social media.
Oh man, don't get me started. It's a black hole.
Right. You're hit with notifications, updates, and it's designed to keep you hooked.
Totally. But how does that affect kids?
Well, all that stimulation can make it really hard to focus on anything for very long.
So their brains are constantly being pulled in a million different directions?
Exactly. And for brains that are still developing, that can be a real problem.
So not only does it make it harder to sit and do homework, but it also affects their ability to think deeply about things.
Exactly. And engage with ideas,
Yeah.
to get lost in a book or a project, all these skills that are so important for, well, just about everything in life.
Right, right. So we've got social deprivation, sleep deprivation, and attention fragmentation. What was that last one again?
Addiction.
Oh, right, of course, addiction. So that's where the whole social media design comes in, I bet.
It does. Social media platforms are practically designed to be addictive. They play on our need to feel connected, to be validated, and to experience something new.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And for a developing brain, that's got to be tough to resist.
It is. It's like they're growing up in this environment that's constantly pushing their buttons.
I can see how that all ties back into the other three things we talked about, too.
Absolutely. Sleep deprivation makes you more vulnerable to addiction. Attention fragmentation makes it harder to resist those distractions. And social deprivation can lead people to seek connection in, well, not so healthy ways online.
Wow, so it's like this vicious cycle.
Pretty much. And Haidt argues that it's creating this generation that's struggling to cope with, the demands of modern life.
This is heavy stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm glad we're talking about it because I think a lot of people are seeing these trends, but not really getting why they're happening.
Yeah, it's easy to just blame the kids or say they're too sensitive, but there's a lot more to it than that.
For sure. And the good news is, Haidt doesn't just lay out the problems. He offers solutions, too.
Okay, now that's what I want to hear about, because so far, this has been pretty bleak.
I know, right? But he actually gives us some hope. He argues that we can turn things around.
Really? Like how?
He says that it's going to take all of us working together. Parents, schools, tech companies, governments. Everyone's got to be on board.
Wow, okay. So what does that look like in practice? What are some of his specific recommendations?
We'll definitely dive into that more later. But first, I wanted to touch on something you mentioned earlier about how boys and girls are being affected differently by all of this.
Oh, yeah, that's important. And honestly, kind of disturbing.
Yeah, so you mentioned that boys and girls are being affected differently by this whole phone-based childhood thing.
Oh, absolutely. That's a huge part of what Haidt dives into.
It's something I've been thinking about a lot, too, because you hear so much about how social media is especially harmful for girls.
It's definitely true. The research shows that girls are experiencing more negative impacts from social media than boys.
Okay, but why? What's the book's take on that?
Well, a few reasons. First, there's social comparison.
Right, I can see that.
Social media is all about presenting your best self, right?
Right.
Everyone's posting their highlight reel.
It's like this constant stream of perfect everything.
Exactly. And that makes it really hard not to compare yourself and feel like you don't measure up.
But especially for girls. It's like there's so much pressure to look a certain way, have the perfect life, all that.
And the book highlights research that shows girls are more likely than boys to engage in social comparison and to be negatively affected by it.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. What else? I've also heard something about how emotional disorders can be kind of contagious among girls. Is that a thing?
Yeah, actually, Haidt talks about that too. He explains that emotional disorders, like anxiety and depression, can actually spread through social networks.
Like a virus.
Kind of, yeah. And it seems to be more prevalent among girls.
Interesting. Why do you think that is?
Well, girls tend to be more interconnected emotionally. They share their feelings more openly, which can create this sort of echo chamber effect where negative emotions get amplified.
So if your friend is struggling, you're more likely to start struggling too, especially if you're a girl.
It's not just about direct conversations either. It's also about picking up on subtle cues and behaviors.
That's really interesting.
And it makes that statistic from the book even more disturbing.
The one about 1 in 4 American teen girls having experienced a major depressive episode.
Yeah, that one. Those numbers are really hard to ignore. It's a real crisis.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've talked about the Great Rewiring, the 4 foundational harms, and how all of this is impacting girls in a particularly concerning way. Now let's get to those solutions you mentioned. What does Haidt propose we actually do about all this?
The good news is he's got some concrete ideas.
Yeah.
And it starts with recognizing that this is a collective responsibility.
Okay, so it's not just about parents telling their kids to get off their phone.
Nope. We all have a part to play. Parents, schools, tech companies, governments. We all need to be involved in creating a healthier environment for young people.
Okay, I like that. So let's break it down. What can parents do?
Well, it's not just about limiting screen time, though that's important too. It's about modeling healthy tech habits ourselves.
Leading by example.
Exactly. If we're glued to our phones all the time, our kids are going to pick up on that.
Makes sense. So modeling good behavior, having those tough conversations.
Yeah.
What about schools? What role do they play in all of this?
Schools are huge. Haidt is a big advocate for phone-free schools. Or at least having designated phone-free zones and times.
To give kids a break from the digital world.
Exactly. And to help them focus on learning and interacting with each other, face to face.
Yeah, I can see that. What about the tech companies themselves? They've got to be part of the solution, right?
Oh, absolutely. Haidt argues that they need to be held accountable for the way their platforms are designed.
So like regulations to protect kids' privacy.
Yes, and limits on exposure to harmful content. And maybe even design features that encourage healthier habits.
I like that, like nudging people to take breaks.
Right, or limiting those endless notifications.
Okay, so we've got parents, schools, and tech companies all stepping up. What about governments? What can they do?
Governments can implement policies that support healthy child development.
So, like funding research on the impacts of technology.
That's a big one. And supporting programs that promote things like outdoor play and real-world social interaction.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like we need to create a world where those things are valued as much as, if not more than, being constantly connected. Okay, so we've got a lot of different players involved. But is this really feasible? I mean, it sounds like a massive undertaking.
It's definitely ambitious, but Haidt doesn't think it's impossible. He emphasizes that it's not about achieving perfection overnight. It's about taking small steps in the right direction.
Starting conversations, raising awareness.
Exactly, and pushing for change at every level of society.
I like that. So it's about shifting the culture as a whole. Now, you mentioned some specific foundational reforms that Haidt proposes. I'm curious to hear more about those.
Oh yeah, those are key. He lays out 4 major shifts that he believes are crucial.
Okay, spill the beans. What are these foundational reforms?
All right, so he says no smartphones before high school, no social media before 16, phone-free schools, and a big push for, get this, more unsupervised play.
Whoa. Okay, let's unpack those. Starting with no smartphones before high school. I mean, how do you even convince parents to do that these days?
I know, right? It's tough. But Haidt's point is that young brains are just so vulnerable to all the stuff we've been talking about.
But the addiction, the attention problems.
Exactly. And those middle school years are crucial for, like, developing a sense of self, figuring out social relationships, all that.
So it's about protecting them during that super sensitive time.
That's the idea. Give them the space to figure things out without all the extra pressure of the digital world.
Okay, I can see that. What about no social media before 16? Same reasoning.
Pretty much. The book talks about how the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that controls impulses and decision-making, it doesn't fully develop until your mid-20s.
Wow, I did not know that.
And social media is designed to exploit those vulnerabilities, It's like giving a kid a Ferrari before they can even drive.
Perfect analogy. So it's not that kids can't use social media responsibly, it's that their brains just aren't ready for it.
Exactly. Okay, now phone-free schools. We talked about this a bit earlier.
Yeah, and I get the idea, but wouldn't that be super hard to implement?
It would definitely be a challenge. But Haidt points to schools that have done it successfully, and they've seen some really positive results.
Like what?
Improved focus, better grades, more social interaction. Creating a space where being present and engaged is more important than being constantly connected.
Okay, I can get behind that. Now, this last one is interesting. More unsupervised play. In today's world, that feels kind of radical.
Right, like we're so obsessed with safety and keeping kids constantly supervised.
Exactly. But Haidt argues that it's actually super important. Why is that?
Well, he says that unsupervised play is how kids develop creativity, problem-solving skills, resilience, all those things.
Makes sense. When they're always being told what to do, they don't get to figure things out on their own.
Right. They don't get to experiment, take risks, make mistakes, learn from them.
It's like we're so afraid of them getting hurt that we're actually preventing them from learning and growing.
Exactly. It goes back to that whole kids on Mars idea. We've created this artificial environment that's so different from how humans evolved.
So by giving them more freedom to explore and play, we're kind of helping them reconnect with their natural instincts.
That's it. And, it's not about being reckless or ignoring safety.
Right. It's about finding that balance.
Exactly. Give them the chance to experience healthy risk, Let them build confidence and learn to navigate the world on their own terms.
Makes you think about how much childhood has changed in such a short time.
It really does. And it makes me wonder if all these mental health issues in Gen Z are like a warning sign.
A warning sign for what?
For the effects of technology on all of us, Like maybe this is a wake-up call to think about how we're using tech and how we can create a healthier relationship with it no matter our age.
That's a really thought-provoking question.
Yeah.
And one I think we all need to be asking ourselves. Well, this has been an amazing deep dive. I'm definitely going to be thinking about all of this a lot more. The Anxious Generation is a must-read for anyone who's concerned about, well, the future, really. So go grab a copy. And as always, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Subscribe for more deep dives like this one, and let us know what you think in the comments. Until next time.